Prynhawn dda, croeso. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is John Williams. I am the chair of Age Cymru, and it's my great pleasure to be chairing this event to launch the film, which we're about to see later on. We have many people in the audience. We have people from care homes, the NHS, local authorities, Welsh Government, third sector, universities, Social Care Wales, and others joining us in a personal capacity. It's very nice to see you all and to share our experience of launching the film. Before we start, maybe it's appropriate that we reflect just for a couple of minutes on the tragic events, the humanitarian crisis that is taking place in Ukraine. 1/5 of the Ukrainian population are aged 60 and over. And it's well established that older people suffer in many different ways during times of conflict and crisis. They have problems accessing services, pensions, and in particular, they're very often unable to leave their homes to a place of safety and are just left to the bombs and the soldiers that attack their property. So our hearts go out to the people of Ukraine, to the older people, but indeed to all generations. We hope and we pray that the peace and the independence, the freedom that they are entitled to will soon be restored to them. Our thoughts are with them. COVID was a very strange experience for us all. And we know that for many older people, particularly those in care homes, it raised many difficult situations, many difficult challenges. And we saw distressing images of people having to wade through windows at families, of families not being allowed to visit, and sadly, of some people dying alone without their loved ones nearby. At the same time, there were some good things to come out of the COVID crisis, and in care homes, we found that people were very innovative, that people rose to the challenge of trying to ensure that residents in care homes had a good life, a good quality of life, and that their well-being was promoted and protected. And we'll hear some of the comments a little later on in the film. It's important, I think, as we reflect on how we did things during COVID and what happened during COVID and how we face the future, that we listen to the actual voices of older people. And that, I think, is the most powerful part of the film that we're going to see. It is the voice of voices of older people that are telling us how it worked for them, what they faced, how they faced it, and how the staff and families and others involved in the care home actually it helped them through this very difficult period of time. So that, I think, is an important message. It's a great pleasure to introduce Julie Morgan, the Deputy Minister for Social Services, Social Care, which I'm sure I know is a very extensive and challenging portfolio. She is well known to many of us, and we've always appreciated in Age Cymru and in other groups her willingness to listen, and to listen in particular to what older people are telling us. So I'm sure, Minister, you will have found this film as invaluable as we address the future challenges. So I'll hand over to you, Minister, to introduce the film.
Diolch, John. A pnawn da, a diolch yn fawr am y gwahoddiad I siarad yma heddiw. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'd like to start by echoing the comments that John said about the people of Ukraine. It is a very sad situation for all the world, really. But in any case, I really welcome the opportunity to introduce this short film, which documents the experience of older people living in care homes between April and December last year. And as John said, it is so important that we listen to what older people are telling us. We know that the pandemic and the measures taken to curb the spread of the virus have had a huge impact on our society, and in particular, people living and working in care homes and their families. And tragically, in the spring of 2020, many residents did lose their lives as the virus spread rapidly through care homes during the first wave. And at this time, deaths were over 3 times higher than the 5-year average. People's contact with each other became very limited, as everyone had to get used to staying connected at a distance. And John has used the description of people chatting through a window or via the phone or by video calls. And sometimes people were using technology for the first time. Whilst the restrictions placed on people were considered necessary in order to protect lives, I know how extremely hard it's been for those living in care homes and their loved ones to have been kept apart from each other for such a prolonged period of time. And striking the right balance between protecting vulnerable people from serious illness and promoting their well-beings and rights through vital contact with their loved ones, has been a huge challenge, and it still is a huge challenge. In July 2020, I set out what actions the Welsh Government would take to support the care home sector and the people living and working in them under the Care Homes Action Plan. And one of the 6 areas under this plan was care home resident well-being. And I was very keen to understand directly from residents what their experience was like and how their well-being could be supported during this really difficult period. And it quickly became apparent that a survey would not be sufficient to capture the level of detail needed. And Age Cymru were able to use their care home networks and expertise to design a more creative way of engaging with residents. At the end of 2020, Age Cymru piloted an approach with 12 residents from 2 care homes. The project offer was a weekly call on Zoom for 6 weeks to ask residents about their experience and find out what had helped them. And these initial conversations were turned into a short film that was published in March last year and was well received. Now, this project was subsequently expanded to include 105 residents across 22 care homes. And the result of that is the film that you will see shortly. I was extremely moved to hear the stories of loss and loneliness as people grieved the death of friends, the loss of family connection, and the frustration of not being able to do the activities that they enjoyed. But I was also heartened by the resilience shown, as well as the community spirit that developed between residents and staff, who, in the words of one resident, had become like family. There were stories of care homes responding creatively and flexibly to what people were missing, such as enabling people to grow their own vegetables, organising quizzes, getting people involved in do-it-yourself. And I'd like take this opportunity to thank the many care home workers who I know have gone above and beyond to offer such brilliant care and support. So thank you, diolch. The direct engagement with residents will help us better understand the impact of the pandemic and the protection measures on care home residents, and it will provide a good foundation for future work in this area. And as we move beyond emergency measures towards a more normal and a more vibrant way of life for care homes and the rest of society, we have an opportunity to reflect on the decisions that were made and understand how they affected those we aim to protect. And whilst there are far fewer restrictions now than in April 2020, I am acutely aware that life in care homes is still far from normal. I also understand that there's a sense for people living in these settings and for their families that they feel left behind compared with the rest of Wales. This project reminds us that people living in care homes are certainly not forgotten, and their voices are a key part of the conversation. We will soon be publishing our transition plan for managing coronavirus beyond alert level 0. This plan will set out how we move from emergency response measures to business as usual, where COVID is managed alongside other infectious diseases like the flu and other respiratory outbreaks in care homes. And I would expect care homes to return to a more normal way of operating, ensuring that unnecessary restrictions are not placed on residents and their visitors. It's also important that we return to the core values in the Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act of ensuring that people have a voice and that they have control over their day-to-day lives. The Tell Me More project has provided a valuable insight into how to have meaningful conversations and get back to the really important question, what matters to you? So I'm really very pleased to now introduce the film from the Tell Me More project. Thank you. Diolch.
Iawn, mae fi fan hyn, de? Ie. Ydy newydd I fi chi. Fain lyfar, casmas. Yn cael mynd allan I stydiad o'i byd, ydy newydd Ond efo salwch. Iw, wahanol.
I feel all right. It hasn't affected us really, except that we haven't been able to go out, but we've accepted that.
What about you, Mary? How have you found it?
Not too bad, thank you. The worst part, I think, of all was when we were shut in our rooms. We were all quarantined in our rooms, so we couldn't get out.
Can I ask, Betty, how's it been for you over the past year?
Grand awful.
Yeah.
Yes, we haven't seen anything. And we haven't had anything. Yeah. Only a bed in a room.
Well, unfortunately, for me, we went into lockdown not long after I came in here. So really speaking, my life in this home has virtually been 90% of the time we've been in lockdown. Human beings are sociable animals, and we are being kept apart from the people we love.
It's true. Wel, mae'n swopor tydi. Chi, da ni'n stuck pawb. Da ni'n stuck yma de. A ni'n gael llawer o visitors.
I had it. I didn't know I had it when they took me to hospital. They told me I was going for a checkup.
Right.
And when I went down to the hospital, they put me in this special ward. The doctor came to see me a week later and she asked me, how am I feeling? I said, I feel pretty good. I said, why are you asking that? Well, she said, we nearly lost you last Friday.
You didn't get COVID then, you avoided getting
COVID. I did get COVID.
Oh, you did? You did?
Yeah, we had COVID here. We had COVID here. And it's not been officially said, but this ward was virtually cut in half from 10 to around about 5/6 people through COVID, through deaths.
I had the virus.
Oh, did you, lovely? How did you feel?
Well, I don't remember very much about it, to be honest, because I felt so ill. I don't
I can just remember being out of everything for a while. And I just felt so ill. I used to be able to walk around a bit before, but now that I've had that virus, I can't walk far without my frame at all.
If I've got to keep the mask on, that is a rule, and I've got to go by the rules, and it annoys me because they've got, like, they have to keep the masks on, and I try to catch what they're saying. I'm deaf and I'm partially blind, and I find it very hard. But they've got rules and they have to keep to the rules, which is right. But I say, shut the blooming rules, you know, they're a damn nuisance.
I said, what did we have the injections for?
Yeah.
I said, that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Which it really was.
Well, it means you're protected, Betty, which is a good thing, isn't it?
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, but if you had the injection, you should have been allowed to go out. But no.
Yeah.
They say no.
I feel as though the virus is getting blamed for everything.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, I'm waiting for a wheelchair to be delivered. Everybody blames the virus because it hasn't been delivered.
Restrictions did lift and we were allowed to see families once a week. But only like your close family. You couldn't see your grandchildren and things.
Mae'r hefyd chan o fama, rhaid i gael o'n de. Ddim yn cael gweld y teulu de. Mae'n rhaid o'n rhaid appointment os ydym eisiau gadael i mewn i fama rwan de.
Ydych chi, dydych ddim yn cael dod, mae'n di ffinas ni i mewn, ddim i fewn rwan. Ond mae'n neud gwahaniaeth de. Chi'n cael gafal yn un mewn ffordd na'ch chi.
Obviously, the visitors can't just come in and sit with us in our rooms or in any of the saloons or anything. So they just set up viewing rooms to sit in down in the dining room, so with a speaker in there. So you can see your guests and have a chat to them. You can't touch them.
Are you allowed to have any visitors now?
Oh, yes. Since my tracing, they could come to your room now as well, you know, they have the test, do it at home, or have the test when they come here, and they can come up to your room then and sit you up here, or you can go down in the library and sit, they keep their masks on.
Now they're coming back in, it's lovely.
Teulu dydd Iau dwytha. O'n i'n gael ymhen blwydd dydd Iau dwytha.
O'n i'n gweld y lluniau ar Facebook, oeddech chi'n 90, oeddech? Waw. O'n i wedi gweld y lluniau, ia, da iawn.
Last Christmas, I had COVID, Christmas Day, and I stayed in my room for 14 days. It was terrible. Wasn't a very nice Christmas then, was it? No, very tough time it was.
At least gen i bobl yn ymwneud oes yn yna. Mae hynny rhywbeth sydd wedi.
A i ddod allan o library yma. O ti yma rhywbeth na'n bob dydd y ti bod. Yr unig 2 ddiwrnod yw wedi Sadwrn ar y Sul.
Yes, every morning we got arts and crafts and we make birthday cards and we got knitting in the afternoon. You can make toys, or you can make, if you can't do that sort of thing, you can just make the squares for the blankets, for the homeless and that sort of thing. And you get them together and talk then, and it's, you know, it's really nice to get together.
Yeah, I enjoy singing along to my music in my room. Sometimes I've got a habit of playing it a bit too loud. I get knocks on my door then, turn it down, please.
I like to be able to have a screwdriver.
She likes to keep busy, Betty.
Yes.
Nice. What do you do with a screwdriver then, Betty?
All sorts of things.
introduced this little newspaper about the families, you know. All the family put photos in and a little message. We get that every Monday. That's good, that is.
So the only thing I'll be able to do now at the moment is my job is to grow the tomato plants in the greenhouse.
Oh, wow, you've got a greenhouse.
Yeah, we're doing chilies and peppers. What else am I doing? Oh, somebody's getting some cucumbers to start.
They added painting. I said painting. I haven't painted since my children was young. They drew around there. I had to paint that. And then they give us quizzes. I said, I don't do quizzes. But Pat did, but I never did. And I won that.
Wow, well done.
Well, mae trobloda am eich llawn lle yma. Ie, mae'n bobl, mae dawn wneud I byd oes.
Singing makes me happy. It makes me really happy. Once I hear somebody singing, I gotta join in. Nid o'n gofyn daw I moyn, I ready, gofyn oedd am cael o'n hapus, cael o'n ôl, cael o'n lan.
Nobody can come in and nobody can go out. But everybody's the same, aren't they? It's not just here, it's everywhere. You can go in any home for the elderly or anything, and no matter how big it is or how posh it is, it's no different.
When somebody did bring COVID into the home, they did try their damnedest to get that sorted out. That would never happen again. They were proactive as well as reactive.
Yeah.
Also, for me, this is personally for me, I wish they would have told me a little bit more what was happening, because I can understand, and I keep my mouth shut, and I won't get frustrated then by being fobbed off.
The girls are nice. They always seem to ask you if you want anything, if you're all right. You know, it's nice that. Just to ask you, is there anything you want? That's a big thing for anybody to be asked. Yeah. People don't realise how nice that question is. Do you want anything? You might not want nothing at all, but you might. And to be asked it and to be able to say, well, yes, really, I'd like you to go across the road and get me a packet of toffees, like one does, you know. It's lovely that, because I love toffees.
I've had quite a few isolations, and I can't get used to them at all. Now, in the hospital, the carers would come in, turn around and go back out as quickly as possible. Never opened the door. And here, they've been a little kinder, and I've had the door open. Seems a little bit more human, you know, more contact.
Efo staff, ys anim yma'r amser, mae gen nhw lot fwy wneud dwi'n yna gynnu nhw cynt, de. Lot mwy o waith, de. Ac yr un cyflog mae'n gael, mae'n hyw lot mwy, de.
Thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me this afternoon. It's been really lovely.
Nice to talk to someone.
It's been lovely chatting with you, Ruth.
Thank you very much for putting up with my nonsense.
Okay, lovely. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi, Will. Diolch I ti, Lois. Cymrwch ofal. Diolch. Ta-ra, wan. Ta-ra.
Well, Eileen, it's been really fantastic talking to you this afternoon. And as part of this project, I'm going to do a portrait of you as well. What do you think of that?
Holy clothes, I hope.
Well, that was a beautiful film, and I think a very powerful film. There was humour, there was sadness, there were positives and negatives. And one thing that struck me, we often talk about listening to the voice of older people. What we heard there were the voices of older people. Each one of them is different. They had their own tale to tell, and it was just wonderful to share their thoughts on the past 18 months, 2 years. And thank you to all the older people involved. A couple of domestic things to make. The translation facility is now available. Sorry, we had a bit of a hiccup at the beginning. You'll see at the bottom a globe, and it's got interpretation. And if you click on that, you can select your language and listen. I think if you're on an iPad, you may not see the globe, but you click on more and you should be able to pick up the translation facilities there. So the other thing is we are having a question and answer session towards the end of our gathering. If you have a question, can you put it in again, you'll see at the bottom a Q&A bubble. If you can put your question in there, we will be able to see it. And if there's time, we will ask the panel. Okay, well, lots of people were involved in making that film and preparing the report. And it's very nice that we've got 3 of the people here with us on the screen. And also Laura Reynolds, who was also involved, a Cartrevi artist who spoke to some of the residents on the film. She is in the audience, as it were, so thanks to her. But here we have John Rattigan, who's the creative practitioner who's worked on the Age Cymru Cartrefi programme for 4 years. John, would you like to share some of your experiences of working on this project with us?
Sure, thank you very much, John. Yeah, like you said, I've been a creative practitioner on Age Cymru's Cartrefi programme for the past 4 years. Going into care homes to deliver art workshops, and more lately working on Zoom. 15 months ago or so, Susie Webster at Age Cymru gave us a brief to put forward creative ideas that would engage care home residents to find out how they were doing during this difficult period. And I'd done a previous project using a kind of personal questionnaire before as a basis for making a film about residents. And we decided that this might be a good starting point for this project as well. So we developed a set of questions to ask residents during chats. And because it proved impossible to go in at the time because of lockdowns and changes in regulations, we decided to do it over Zoom, which allowed us obviously to record the chats. And this meant overcoming all the kind of technical difficulties of slightly dodgy Wi-Fi in some homes, and people, activities coordinators having to move people several times during the chat, and they were amazing. Thank you very much for that. And dealing with all the background sounds and whatnot. But generally the chats went really well and were very successful. And we found that residents were really happy to be talking to someone from outside their homes when visiting was so restricted. Just to give one example, I chatted with a chap called Ralph in North Wales in his 80s, and he had dementia. And on starting the chat, Ralph told me that he was losing his memory and he didn't recognize me. And I said, well, Ralph, I've never actually talked to you before. And he said, oh, that's helpful to know, because otherwise I'd be wondering who you were. And we talked for about 20 minutes and we covered lots of things. And sometimes his dementia was quite apparent, really. I asked him about what job he used to do before he retired. And he said, oh, I seem to think I had a really good job, but he couldn't remember what it was. And I asked him about his hobbies, and he said, oh, I used to do lots of things, but again, he couldn't really remember what they were. But he liked listening to music at the moment, which was nice. But one thing that he found frustrating at the moment was that he said he couldn't understand why everyone was sitting so far away from him at the moment. And he figured that maybe old people get some sort of disease when they're older, and they don't want that spread to other people. And this was, of course, COVID. And I tried to explain to him about COVID and you know, why people were sitting apart from him. But at the end of the 20 minutes, Ralph said he really enjoyed the chat with me and that it really brightened his day. And I thought, well, you know, if he can brighten the day of somebody who's kind of isolated because of COVID and isolated in a way because of dementia, then the project must be doing great work, and it was really worth doing. So one other important element of the project was, of course, that we decided that it would be a really nice idea to do a portrait for each resident involved that we talked to. And we did those using digital tablets. Sometimes we'd start the portrait actually during the chat, and sometimes we did them off the Zoom videos. And we actually printed those out and framed them and sent them off to residents. And generally they were really well received, which was nice. And I'd previously been working on another couple of films where I'd used software to animate clay heads. And we decided that using this kind of technique on the portraits and combining the portraits with the resident chats we'd recorded would be a really effective and interesting way of communicating what we'd done on the project to a wider audience. And that's really the origin of the film.
Good. Thank you, John. I think the portraits and the voice is very successful. It works. It's very effective, I think. And you know, congratulations for having that that idea. Okay. Our next visual artist is Emma Prentice, and Emma has worked with Age Cymru, I think, for six or more years. Emma, over to you.
Yeah, hi, John. Yes, I've been working with Age Cymru for 6 years as a visual artist, and I feel very lucky to be part of the Tell Me More project, which I feel grew into something quite magical and unique. When I first spoke to the residents, it was a very difficult time for care homes. I spoke to many residents that had been isolated from the outside world for some time. I feel so privileged I was able to connect to these care homes at such a challenging time, and we thank them so much for allowing us in. And as you can see from the film, we wanted to very much capture the true voices of the residents, and the questions we asked were built around the census framework, and these including the sense of belonging, continuity, purpose, achievement, and significance. Our aim was predominantly to find out how the residents were feeling at this time. The conversations varied amongst the residents. Some were very affected by the pandemic and others were very resilient to it. I had some amazing conversations with some amazing people, and there was laughter and tears along the way. And the residents were so open and willing to give their time to tell me their feelings. In our half-hour chats, we covered lots, and the residents loved chatting about their younger lives. I asked one 95-year-old lady what her secret was, and she told me she spent many years working in a brewery, and all those years of lifting barrels had made her strong. It was so funny to imagine her doing this, as she was such a small, frail lady. I loved the glint in her eye as she told me about her life, like she wanted to surprise me. She was so proud of her achievements and seemed very content in herself. Amongst the chats, there were obviously some really, really hard moments too. And some residents had really suffered mentally. And they were affected by the isolation, the uncertainty, and the boredom. Many struggled with not seeing family and friends. Others had activities taken away from them, and connection from care workers was limited. And many saw their friends around them die. And this was very difficult for me to hear, and so brave for them to share with me. I was surprised how adaptable and accepting some of the residents were to the restrictions. And it was so lovely to hear stories of how they got through the time. And I loved the story of a gentleman who started to knit through this pandemic and knitted lots of poppies to keep himself occupied. As an artist, this has been such a special experience for me. And I've loved the whole journey of connecting with the residents, drawing the portraits and bringing them to life through the animation. And it's just been such a privilege to be involved with such a special project.
Thank you, Emma. Very personal reflections there, and as you say, there were sad moments and there were happy moments, and I think it's great you talk about it being a privilege, because when people share those kind of memories, I think it is with us it is a privilege, and we must not forget that. But thank you, and thank you for your work on the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our third speaker is Sandy. Sandy Gree. Sandy, like me and most of us here, I guess, is not an artist, but it was very important that when we spoke to older people, that we spoke to them in their preferred language. They were talking about very personal things, and to be able to do that in their preferred language was very important. So Emma enabled many Welsh-speaking residents to share their thoughts in their natural choice of language. Over to you, Sandy. If you press the interpretation button, you should get simultaneous translation. Sandy, over to you.
Diolch yn fawr, John. Dydw I ddim yn artist o gwbl. Ges i'r gwahoddiad I ymuno o'r prosiect I hwyluso y sgwrsiau drwy'r Gymraeg. Roedd hi'n fraint fod yn rhan o brosiect hynod o bwysig a gael clywed gan presylwyr sy'n maen nhw wedi ymdopi drwy'r pandemig. Mae pawb fo stori I ddeud, a da ni gyd yn hoffi sgwrsio. Dwi wedi siarad fo pobl hynod o wych am eu profiadau nhw. Y sgwrsiau di wneud fi deimlo reit wylaidd ar adega, a crio hefyd, wedi bod yn blesar yn sgwrsio fo'r pobl, a mae hyn yn mynd I fod hefo fi am byth. Rhywun newydd yn dangos diddordeb, di hyn ddim yn adlewyrchiad o'r gofalwyr o gwbl, jes bod ni fel pobl yn licio cwrdd a rhywun newydd ag a chat bach. Roedd na gefnogaeth cryf I wneud yn siŵr bod lleisiau y siaradwyr Cymraeg yn cael eu clywed wrth gwrs. Fel mae John di dweud, mae'n hynod o bwysig I atgoffa ni gyd bod na ddau iaith swyddogol yng Nghymru a dim pawb sydd yn medru siarad Saesneg, a fel siaradwr Cymraeg fy hun, dwi'n dall yn hollol pa mor bwysig ydy siarad yn fy mam iaith. A ges I brofiad o weld bod pobl di agor allan I fi, gan I fod yn teimlo mwy cyffyrddus a hyderus I siarad yn ei mam iaith, ac yn gwerthfawrogi siarad drwy'r Gymraeg. Wbath mor fychan a hyn, ond hynod o bwysig, yn wneud gwahaniaeth enfawr I bobl. Fel mae John ac Emma wedi deud yn barod, mae wedi bod yn blesar gael y brofiad o siarad efo'r presylwyr gwych yma. Roedd pob sgwrs yn bwysig, a na I byth ein hofio hynna. Pan nes I gwrdd â Will, a welsoch chi yn y ffilm. Gŵr boneddig yn delio'r pandemig yma, ffordd reit, mesuredig ac yn siarad o gymaint o falchdar am y gofalwyr. Nes I ofyn wrtho fo beth sy fo licio wneud, oedd o'n deud I uchel gais oedd I weld y bypass newydd sy allan I Gaernarfon. Ar ôl y sgwrs, o'n i'n meddwl wedyn, hwn di'r un lle dwi wedi bod yn ista bron bob dydd yn y traffig, yn cwyno. Nes i'n cwyno ar ôl y sgwrs hefo Will. A Rhiannon I gŵr hi na fo na dyfeisio y delyn Gymraeg 12 volt gynta. Waw, amazing go iawn. Fel da ni gyd wedi deud, da ni gyd wedi mwynhau yr sgyrsiau. Mae'r rhai di bod yn drist, a mae'r rhai di bod yn hwylog. A mae'r pobl yma, just gymaint o fraint, a da ni di bod mor lwcus, a da ni di ffurfio perthnasa newydd hefo pobl anhygoel a dewr. A dwi yn hun yn edrych ymlaen i'w cwrdd â nhw wyneb I wyneb I roi y byd yn ei le yn fuan iawn. Felly diolch I Age Cymru am y gwaharddiad gwych yma. Diolch, John.
Thank you, Sandy. I just wonder how much we would have missed if we hadn't have been able to talk to some residents in their language of choice. How much better it is to be able to open up in your natural language, your preferred language. And, thank you for your work there in making that happen. It added a great deal to the to the powerful nature of the film. Thank you, Sandy. Okay, well, the question and answer session will now commence. We have on the panel the Deputy Minister, Julie and John, Emma and Sandy, and also Mary Ellis Parker, who is the care home manager of Plas Gwilym Care Home in Penygroes. And that's a home that's very much integrated into the community. I think a lot of residents are local, as are a lot of the staff. So thank you, Mary, and again, thank you for being involved in the project. We've got some questions come in. The minister unfortunately has to leave at 4, so I will direct some of the earlier ones to her. One that's come through is, how do you see this film being used following the launch? Julie, do you think we could perhaps ask you from a Welsh Government perspective?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think it's a fantastic film, and I really enjoyed it, and I found it deeply moving. And I think the way the messages come over are absolutely tremendous. So I certainly would like to think we will use it as a learning experience for all the people who work in Welsh Government and who work in this field. Although, to be quite honest, it'd be quite good for everybody to see it, because what happened during that pandemic, affected everybody in the community, and I think it would be really good for them to see it. So I would like to I think it could be used to help people train and understand what this section of the community went through. So I'd be very keen for that to happen. And then some of the messages that have come through, I think we need to look at those in terms of how our policy is, how our policy works. Just thinking, one of the residents said that they wanted to be told, the truth and absolutely everything that happened. They wanted to know what was happening. And I think that was sort of quite a message, really, when you think maybe we've tried to shelter people from some truth. And that was a message coming over to me. And so I think we could use it to learn and to help and to think about our policy in the future.
Okay, thank you. Mary, do you have any thoughts on how the film may be used?
Sorry, trying to find my unmute. I think what's really important for me, for people to understand, is that these are the conversations that we as staff members in the homes have been having from the very beginning with our residents. And I think, the importance of this project is bringing it to the public forum and having it in the public agenda. There was a lot of media coverage post the beginning of COVID about care homes being forgotten and that sort of thing. The care homes might have been forgotten, but the residents certainly weren't in the environment that they were in. So I think, there's going to always be challenges from a public health perspective in the care sector. And I think it's just always important to be forcing the issue of making sure that all our citizens are forgotten in any public forum conversation.
Thank you, Mary. John, any thoughts from the artist's perspective, maybe?
Well, it would just be nice to get it out there, really, to as many people as we can. As people have said, the kind of old people thing is from kind of 50 upwards or 55 upwards or whatever, and it's such a huge group of people. All with different needs, really, and it'll just be great to get their voices out there. I mean, the film is just one part of this, really, and the report is another part, and so many people took part in this project. And I just wanted to say that all the contributions have been fed into a report as well. So if you're missing off the film, all those valuable contributions are in the report, and they will hopefully go towards, affecting Welsh Government policy in the future. So, the film is just the tip of the iceberg, if you like.
Yes, I think with 100 people interviewed in the report, and well worth reading. Emma, do you have any thoughts on how we might use the video, or Sandy?
Yeah, I think I mean it could be shown in schools, even in all social care sectors. I think it's a film that can be shown everywhere, because I think it's something that we don't very often see into care homes, and I think hearing the voices of the residents is so important, and I think the film does that in a really creative, concise way, and there's entertainment as well, so people will take notice of it. So it's raising awareness where people will listen and maybe see care homes and residents in a different way.
Thank you. Yes, Sandy. You're on mute.
Dwi'n meddwl fysa fo'n gallu fod yn, mae yna gymaint o bethau a ddim yn gallu fod yn y ffilm. Wrth gwrs, fel nes ti ddeud, mae yna dros 100 o bobl di gael y sgwrs a di deud. Felly fysa ni'n gallu defnyddio fo fel adnodd hyfforddi, a bod mae yna gymaint o ddysgu i wneud allan o dim, mae pob wedi ddeud. Ac falle fel oedd Emma'n deud, dechrau'n gynnar efo'r ysgolion. Dwi'n meddwl bod o'n bwysig i ni glywed gynno pobl sydd yn hyn yng Nghymru, a dwi'n gwybod bod fi ddim ar ben yn hyn efo mae Emma a John, da ni gyd wedi dysgu gymaint gynna'r pobl gwych yma.
Yes, I think taking it to schools is a good idea, because there's an intergenerational message there that we must never forget. I think children have grandparents, and it helps them understand what they might have gone through during COVID. It's interesting. There's a comment here from Simon Cassidy, a touching film capturing the vibrancy, humour, and poignancy about people's lives. It would be so valuable to timetable this film into all university undergraduate healthcare programs. Are there any arrangements in place to do this? Well, it will be publicly available, and I think it would make a lot of sense to put it into healthcare, into social care, into law courses. I think let's disseminate it as widely as possible, because it is a very important insight into what people experienced during COVID. Another question here: what do you think are the main lessons we can learn from the film? And again, Julie, I'll start with you, conscious of your need to leave us very shortly.
Well, I mean, in a way, some very positive things in terms of the resilience of the people that you met in this film. Because I think that's what, I know there's poignancy and sadness, but what came over most strongly, I think, was the resilience and, a spirit that came out very strongly. And also, I think, the more awareness of what the role of the care workers are in the residential homes, and the huge effort that they made during this period. And I hope we will get more recognition of care workers. And I'd like to think that we want to work from the Welsh Government to try and develop, care working into, to be seen more as a profession, because we know what a fantastic job the care workers are doing. So that's one thing I'd like to see come out of this film and out of the pandemic, a knowledge of what care work means. And we are committed in the Welsh Government to promoting that, and looking at the whole aspects of the job of a care worker. So that's one of the things I'd be very keen to come out of this, and what I'd be certainly working towards.
Yes, a care worker, it's a very challenging, a very complex job, and we need to recognise that. Sandy, any thoughts on what lessons we might learn?
I just, I suppose, cario ymlaen efo be mae'r Deputy Gweinidog yn newydd ddeud rwan, meddwl amdan bob un o'r ysgyrsiad dwi wedi gael, lle mor glir am y berthynas sydd gynnor presylwyr hefo'r gofalwyr yn gafal yn dyn yn eu dwylo nhw weithiau pan o'n ni'n gael y sgwrs. A felly, da chi'n gwybod, maen nhw yn glir, y presylwyr, yn hynod o glir be ydy gwerth gyfalwyr yn y sector. A fel na fo ni glwad Will yn deud, fysa ni'n yma blaw amdan y gofalwyr yma. Felly, dwi'n meddwl fydd y ffilm yma, dwi'n meddwl bod yr pandemig ei hun wedi codi ymwybyddiaeth amdan y gwaith a'r sgiliau mae'r sector yma'n neud. Dwi'n meddwl bod y ffilm yma yn mynd i reid yr jam ar y gacen i symud ymlaen, lle.
A jyst ychwanegu hynna, Sandy, hefyd. Oeddech chi'n dweud pa mor dda oedd y gofalwyr ag ati, ond mae'r trigolion hefyd wedi bod yn gefnogaeth ac yn motivation i ni fel gweithwyr proffesiynol gario mlaen hefyd, pan mae bethau wedi bod yn hynod anodd. Da ni hefyd wedi bod mewn sefyllfa lle y trigolion wedi bod yn gefn i ni hefyd fel tîmoedd staff.
Dwi'n siŵr.
I think Sandy mentioned, holding someone's hand. I mean, that was one of the saddest things about the whole COVID experience. We couldn't hug people, we couldn't hold hands, we couldn't to do the things that we do naturally that are reassuring and loving, and that was a great shame. John, any thoughts?
I just think, I mean, the film just shows that just because you're in a home, you've still got amazing ideas. You can still articulate those ideas, and your ideas and your views should still count. And I think that the film shows us that there's humour there. There's there's a sense of loss there, and some people we talked to said, they said their opinion and said, but the Welsh government aren't going to want to hear from me. I'm just a person in an old people's home. But their views should absolutely count, and hopefully this film will contribute a little towards that. Those views counting, I think.
Emma?
Yeah, similar to Sandy and John said, but I think the main thing for me was to not underestimate the residents, because they're all completely different from each other. And I think when I first started the project, maybe I had an idea that maybe it was going to be a lot harder than it was, and in some ways it was. But there was a lot of fun and laughter within the conversations too. So that was something to learn from them as well. So I feel like I learned quite a lot from the residents while I was chatting to them.
Yes, it's a two-way experience, I think, which is nice. It's and picking up the point that John made, looking at this as their home, not an institution. It's their home, and you got the impression that's how they felt. It was their home. It was their community, and that was lovely. Yes, going on to some of the more practical things, how were the homes chosen? I don't know whether any of you were involved in choosing the homes, but Mary, how did you ask Mary maybe? How did you end up being involved?
I was approached by Sandy. Mae Sandy'n dŵad o ardal Dyffryn Nanllen wreiddiol. Wedyn mae yna gysylltiad naturiol, dwi'n meddwl, hefo'r ardal, ac yn sicr mae'r iaith Gymraeg yn bwysig iawn yn yr ardal ac yn cael ei siarad gan y mwyafrif o'r trigolion sydd yn preswylio yn Plas Gwilym. Dyna sut o Sandy gysylltiad.
Yes, because it's an interesting range of homes involved, geographically, language, and yes, it's nice to get that broad perspective. Any of you, the others, Emma, John, Sandy, any thoughts on choice of care homes? I don't know how many each of you visited.
Ia'n debyg, be nath Mari ddeud, be nes i oedd meddwl amdan dwi'n gweithio i gofal Cymdeithasol Cymru, so dwi'n gyfarwydd iawn hefo y cartrefi a di gweithio fo rheolwyr dros y blynyddoedd, ond nes i ddewis y cartrefi o'n i yn ymwybodol fydd na siaradwyr Cymraeg yna hefyd, a kind of galw ar bobl lle dwi'n gwybod oedden nhw fysan nhw wedi mwynhau fod yn rhan o hwn, ond wrth gwrs mae o lawr i'r pobl sydd yn byw yn y cartrefi, i fyny iddyn nhw sydd yn eisiau bod yn rhan o'n, ond oedd bob un o'n i di siarad efo yn hapus iawn i gyfrannu.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Minister, I'm aware that you will be leaving us in a moment, so diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much for your support for the project. Thank you for attending and sharing your thoughts.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And as I say, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot we can learn from it. And one thing, you know, which we are committed to in the Welsh Government is to try to work against age discrimination. And I think this is a really, you know, what we've heard from the people in the film will really help us with that. So thank you very much, and I hope, I'm sure it'll be widely disseminated, and certainly I want to make sure that people in the Welsh Government see it. So, diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Okay, well, there's some other questions come through, and mainly about the you know, how it worked in practice. And one, you know, with all that was going on with COVID, all that care homes had to deal with, how happy were they to cooperate, and how open were they in cooperating with you, given all the other things that were going on? John, can I perhaps start with you?
Generally, people were very, you know, I mean, I think the way we did it was we kind of put out invites, potential invites to homes using the care homes network within Age Cymru. And we also wanted the geographical spread as well. But once homes had expressed an interest in being involved, you know, oftentimes because of all the lockdowns, sometimes we had to just delay things again and pick it up again in, you know, in a month's time or whatnot. But once we'd set dates, you know, the homes were amazing in cooperating and in setting up the technology for us, really. And so thank you again to them. They're absolutely amazing. And we just found that, you know, the residents themselves so enjoyed having a chat with somebody for half an hour. It was a kind of relief from the normal kind of, you know, people kind of stuck within their very small communities in the homes, weren't having visitors, and just to speak to a person from the outside was, I think, really refreshing for them.
Sandy?
Ia, yr un fath a be mae John di ddeud, really. Mae'r cartrefi di bod yn briliant, de. Oedden ni'n ymwybodol pa mor bwysig oedden nhw a bod nhw yn y crisis. Ond oedden nhw wedi gwneud bob dim, oedden nhw'n gyfeillgar trwyddo i gyd, a wedi gwneud bob dim yn ei gall i gario ymlaen efo'r trefniadau. Gynnon ni ddim control weithiau o technology, so da ni wedi just gorfod mynd fel mae wedi mynd. Ond i fod yn deg, dwi'n meddwl, dim ond un waith geis i dipyn o draffath. Ond oedd y drws yn agored, y virtual, oedd y drws yn agored i ni, ac oedden nhw yn falch iawn bod i presylwyr nhw, i trigolion nhw, yn mynd i gael eu llais.
Sure. Very important. Emma, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think overall the residents love chatting, and when we did the pilot, we didn't really have a cap on the time frame, and so we did have quite some long conversations. I think the first ever one I had was about an hour and a half with a lady, because we just kept chatting and chatting, and I think as we went on, we thought we better have a cap of half an hour. But sometimes it was quite hard to stay within that, because the residents wanted to chat with us for longer and longer. So I think that sort of says it all, really. I think it was just a really nice time, and I think that was part of the challenge of talking via Zoom as well, was to make it as natural and enjoyable for them as possible, that we were just there to have a chat. You know, it was nothing heavy, and I think that really worked.
Thank you. I mean, Mary, for you, it must have been a very busy period for you, and you had lots of things to do. What was your experience of welcoming the project into your home?
I think we'll always be our biggest advocates for having our residents' voices heard. So irrespective of what's going on externally, we'll always make time. And I think, well, that's one of the most important things, is to make time for things that, you know, things like these projects that in the larger scheme of things on the priority scale maybe are not so high. But I think it's so important to be able to put things on in the public arena, basically, and having the residents have an opportunity as well to have somebody's time, and that is so crucial and valuable, and something that we as a team were really struggling with at the time. Everything was taking longer, all the PPE, getting, you know, sort of trying to isolate people, and everything was taking longer. So having Sandy and John sort of come in, you know, it gave people time that we didn't necessarily have at that time. So I think I scared Sandy and John a little bit with all the procedures and the PPE and everything. But, you know, the virtual thing, I mean, I think as well, the whole COVID crisis has had to shift the use of technology up a gear. We had a really sketchy Wi-Fi link at the time, and it's something that we've pushed on the agenda and given attention to, which means it's opened up a lot of other doors as well. So yeah, it's been valuable in more than one way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, yes, technology is interesting, that how quickly people did adapt, and how important the iPads and the like became during COVID. Can I ask perhaps each of you, maybe a personal question, but you were looking at you before you joined the project, looking at you now. What's been the big change in your thinking, in your thinking about older people, maybe? John, can I start with you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was part of Age Community's car traffic project before this as well. Yeah. So I did some work with older people before that as well. But you know, I think, like as Emma said before, we just find I think everyone on the project just finds old people just totally fascinating. We love to listen to their stories, and we just love to give people time, and just, you know, they're just amazing. They've led such interesting lives. So it's such an interesting historical period that, you know, I've got all the time in the world for them, really. I could listen to them all day. So, yeah.
And, you know, it's important, I think, to record their experiences, because, you know, we can't afford to lose them. Emma?
Yeah, the same as John. I was been working with the Carteffi project for years before this, so I have had experience working in care homes. But I suppose the difference between the face-to-face and the Zoom conversations were that I was so surprised how adaptable they were to the technology, and to sort of, you know, just accept that we were there in front of them on screen and still have really lovely conversations. So yeah, I think that's something that maybe I learned, that maybe I'd underestimated before, that when we came up with the idea of doing it via Zoom, we weren't sure if it was going to work because of technology and it goes wrong and things, but also because of maybe the technology wouldn't work with care homes, but in a lot of cases it did. So I think I think that was great. And also it's just shown that you should be able to, you can push the boundaries and find new ways of connecting and communicating in care homes.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can push the boundaries, and you mustn't buy into this assumption that anyone over 70 is a technophobe, because they're not. That's it. Sandy, your thoughts, before and after, as it were.
Yeah, wel, dwi'n meddwl I fi, yn rôl i'n gweithio i Gofal Cymdeithasol Cymru fel swyddog ymgysylltu, mae'r rhan o rôl i wedi bod yn cyfarfod hefo'r rheolwyr, datblygu adnodda i wneud, i supportio nhw i bod nhw'n gweithio mewn ffordd saff. Felly mae hwn fel kind of wedi joinio fo'i gyd efo'i gilydd, wedi cael y sgwrs hefo'r pobl sydd yn derbyn y gwasanaethau yma, gyda'r gweithwyr da ni yn ei rheoleiddio ac yn y blaen. So mae hynna wedi bod yn brofiad gwych, a dwi'n gwybod pa mor lwcus dwi wedi bod gael fod rhan o'r prosiect yma. Ac yn bersonol I fi, efo'r pobl dwi wedi siarad efo yn y mywyd personol I a falla yn y mywyd gwaith, I peidio meddwl bod fi'n gallu trwsio bob dim. Weithiau, mae pethau'n mynd I ddigwydd, a mae allan o'n control ni, a mae hynna'n oce hefyd.
Absolutely. Mary, it's an odd question to ask you. You've worked in care homes for many years, I guess, but the impact of the project on you personally.
It's just it was lovely at the time to have a distraction outside of COVID. Eating, breathing, and living PPE and hand washing and all the extra procedures. So it was just nice to have something else to think about, to allow us as a staff team to focus, and for the residents to focus on something else as well. And as much time as we would have liked to have given people to have meaningful conversation, it wasn't always there. So, knowing that they've had that through this project is really valuable. And always, I think, when we're involved in any project that's recorded, it's almost like having a legacy. So, those memories are captured in that moment. And memories and looking back and reflecting on this kind of thing is really wonderful for family members, for, remembering any period of time. So, having the pictures up on the wall, all the stills that we received from Age Cymru, it is a reminder as well, and a talking point as well for the residents that took part and for residents that didn't take part. So it gets the conversation going as well between residents and the staff team. So, really, really nice intervention at a time that was really poignant and is to be remembered.
It's a lovely note to finish on. To thank you all, both for attending today, but also for all the hard work and commitment that you've put into the project to produce this wonderful film, which I'm sure will have an impact across Wales, and I would suspect beyond. I think Age Cymru is keen that it's disseminated as widely as possible. I think I saw a link in the chat line. If not, the link will be made available. I do like the idea of trainees seeing the film. I like the idea of residents, of families, of carers, of everybody actually seeing or hearing, listening to the voices of the residents in care homes about their experience during COVID. A number of words stand out. Resilience is one, and they did show resilience. It was a tough time, but they showed resilience. Humour. I just liked the humour. I loved the when she was saying about rules. I hate rules. Can't be doing the rules. I think that's a lovely. As a lawyer, I shouldn't say that, but it's a lovely sentiment, I think. Sadness, yes, but openness and honesty in the way that they spoke to you, and that's a real wonderful legacy that we have, and we must make use of it. So to close, I'd like to thank you all for your involvement. I'd like to thank everyone who's attended this this launch this afternoon, and I hope you will disseminate the film as widely as possible, and the report when it is released. And as I said earlier on, it just reminds us that there are voices of older people. Each older person has a tale to tell that's unique to them, and we can't overestimate the importance of listening to those voices and acting on what people tell us, because they're the best placed to know how COVID impacted on them. The film, I think, will take us some way into understanding what COVID meant to many people in care homes. So diolch yn fawr iawn, many thanks to you all. You always used to say travel home safely, but I guess most of us are at home. But take care, keep safe, and thank you for attending and for participating. Bye-bye.